Well, this video is one we keep getting asked for, and I hadn't had a chance to collect my thoughts long enough to put it into the nether regions of the internet until today. So today we will be discussing some techniques for constructing straps, making your own straps out of our favorite materials, cork, wax, canvas, but this would work for almost anything. I'm going to show you a few of these straps, and then we'll talk about the techniques used to make them. So first, right here you have just a plain cork strap, but you can see when I flip it over that this side has two and this side has one. It's basically what I call a raw edge enclosed strap. This one will take quite a bit of material to construct, but it is a little padded because our cork fabric is a little thicker, which I really like in a bag strap, and you don't have to piece anything together, so that's kind of nice, and I'll talk to you about how to make that one. You can do it with cork, or you can also do it with wax canvas. So this is a wax canvas strap that uses the same technique you can see here. But the difference is this one is not nearly as padded, and it's going to, you can see, not hold its shape as well as the cork strap does. But it's still fairly comfortable, especially if it's wide, so I'll show you that. And then, of course, this does open up, so, you know, it might have behooved me to sew a little closer to the edge here. Then you have, this is a beautiful strap, but if you can see, there is a seam here, right? But the 4 lines of stitching just make it look really nice. So you can do something like this if you don't want to use as much cork as that raw edge enclosed strap. And I'll show you how to get to this point on it, and then you can zhuzh it up with a little bit of stitch work. Okay. And then lately I've been doing a lot of these two-tone straps. I'll show you how to make these. So there's 2 different methods we're going to cover today. This one I made using the method where you just do it all at once and you only have 2 lines of stitching. It works really well, but you can kind of see that my lines aren't exactly straight. This one's a little bit more difficult because you're not breaking it up and making sure everything is clipped separately. This one you're clipping all at once. Same thing here. But these were a lot cleaner lines in my opinion. That's just me. And then I'll show you another one where you're going to have 4 lines of stitching on the back side and 2 on the top side, because you're going to basically break this method apart and do it in 2 steps instead of just all in one. So let me get these out of the way and we shall get started. The first thing you'll want to do, and I'm going to use wax canvas to show you kind of what I'm talking about as far as how to fold and measure. So each one of these will create a 1-inch finished strap. The difference being is this one, we're enclosing all of the raw edges. This one would end up with a seam down the back in the middle. You can then leave it like that. You can finish it up with laying another fabric on top of it to make that 2-tone strap. You know, you could use a cotton, a wax canvas, whatever you like. You can make them completely even on the edges, or you can inset them just a little bit. I'll explain that in a second. So first we're going to start with the completely enclosed strap because it's the easiest to do. So in this case, whatever your finished width of the strap is going to be, you're going to quadruple it. So in this case, you want a 1-inch strap. Well, you're going to do 4 inches by however long you want your strap to be. And the reason you'll see in just a second why that is, but you're basically going to, and I don't know why the camera keeps focusing, it's driving me crazy today. You're going to take your ruler and you're going to measure a half all the way down. Can you see that mark? Okay. Let me see if I... So you've marked your half all the way down, and what you'll be doing is each one of these straps you're making starts out the same, but you're folding in the raw edges to meet in the middle. And if this isn't perfect, I'm not actually making straps out of this, so don't judge me. But you're going to bring them in to meet in the middle. So now that you've had it met in the middle, you're going to fold over the finished edges to meet this way. And what you want to do is just very much make sure that they are even right here along the edge, that you don't have any, real big overhang anywhere, that your strap ends up being fairly straight. You can put it on a cutting mat or ruler and make sure it's fairly straight, but if you folded it where it's supposed to go, should be. And then what you'll do then is you'll just do a stitch. And if you're using cork, you'll want to do a stitch about a 1/4 inch in. You definitely don't want to do any less than that. Not enough breathing room for this crease here. And then you'll sew each side down the length. You could just sew the one side that has your 2 folds here, but I like a strap that has 2 edges of stitching. So one isn't necessary, but it still looks really good. So. Alright, so that's how you would make a fully enclosed 1 material strap without having to do any kind of turning, that sort of thing. Use a lot more fabric though. So in this case, you have, you're wanting a seam down the back edge. You're going to take the finished width of your fabric and just double it. So instead of quadrupling it, you're just doubling it this time. But you're going to start out doing the same thing. You're going to mark the middle. In this case, it's 1 inch. All the way down. You're going to turn your edge in to meet in the middle, your raw edges. So you're going to get this as close as humanly possible together in the middle. What you don't want is like a big gap. You don't want it to be gappy like this. It will make your finished edge kind of do this number. So you'll want to get it as close as you can without overlapping and without a gap. Wax canvas is super easy because you can basically just mush it together and then really crease the edges with your fingers, and it's really not going anyplace for a little while. Again, you're going to want to check and make sure that it's straight. So this will give you a strap as it is, but you will have a seam down the back. It is relatively thin, so you might want to pad it, but if you like, you can use this as a base for a 2-tone strap. Using the same method with 2 different pieces of material. So the main difference is you're going to do a little extra math to figure out where you want that 2-tone part to sit. If your finished edge strap is going to be 1 inch, right? So you already have this base, but you want to inset the top layer let's say like 1/8 of an inch. So you want to take a total of 1/4 inch off of this. So now you have a 3/4 inch piece that's going to be laying on top of this inch piece, right? So now when you go to make that, you will just be doubling 3/4 of an inch, and then you'll do the same exact thing as this. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say that this is your strap. I already have one made up for, sorry. I already have one made up for a daisy crossbody I'm working on. So let's just say that this is the base of your strap, okay? And in this case, it's 1.5 by whatever. And I can show you that right here, 1.5 inches. What I wanted to do was inset this piece 1/4 inch on each side. I really wanted that cork to show through. So since I'm taking 1/4 from here and 1/4 from here, that's a total of 1/2 inch. So 1.5 minus 1/2 inch would be 1 inch. So this strap's going to be 1 inch wide. So my initial material I cut was 2 inches by whatever to get a total of 1 inch finished. I do the same exact thing. I fold it down the middle all the way down, and then what I can do is put them seam sides together, clip this, and then sew down. And you can do this a couple of different ways. I'm going to show you one method that's a little more, it's not more complicated, it just, you're doing it all at the same time, and that may be difficult for some people. I do kind of like this method actually a little better. It gets my seams a little straighter. So what I've done on this is I went ahead and folded everything in, and I clipped this down the whole length. So again, a little bit of math here, but in order to keep this from having to be put together all at the same time, you can sew this piece separately and then place this on and sew it together. It will take a little more math to make sure your seams are looking really nice. Try and get this 1/8 to 1/4 away from center, and then try and keep your stitching at least 1/4 inch away from here. Whatever that looks like spacing wise for you that you enjoy, do the math first, and then figure out where your stitches are going to fall, and do that before you stitch this down. In this case, I've sewn 1/4 inch away from center on either side. That leaves me 1/2 inch to work with here. Now this will fall at about 1/4 inch here, away from the cork edge. In order to make sure that I capture and have like a scant seam here on the wax canvas, I'm going to need to figure out what that's going to look like. And most likely it's going to be maybe like 3/8. I might do 3/8 from the edge, the cork edge in, so that it's going to give me a scant seam here. When you're doing this, the only other thing to remember is if you're doing it this way, you have your thread here, right, that you've matched, maybe, or contrasted, doesn't matter. If you are doing a completely different fabric here, and you don't want this thread color on here, you'll need to remember that. So what I'll end up doing is putting this beige color in my bobbin and this charcoal color in my machine in order to make it look the way that I want it to look finished. But that'll make that look pretty fantastic. Alright, so while laying and clipping your pieces together, seam sides together, you're going to want to, and I'm just eyeballing it here to make sure that what I know to be on the cork side, so 1/4 inch in my case, is all that's showing there. If you deviate too much, our seam is so small on the wax canvas that you will notice. So you definitely want to be a little bit of a perfectionist here. Make sure you double check it before you head over to the machine to sew it up. And here is our finished strap so far. Pretty straight. As you can see, there are 2 seams on the front side and 4 on the back, evenly spaced. That's what doing the math ahead of time will get us, which is great. You can make that seam pattern any way you like. We will have some selvage on both ends, and the wax canvas is a longer width. So let's just go ahead and trim that off right now. I'm pulling it along the table here to check for any signs of twisting, but there aren't any. Now let's take one last look at this fantastic stitching. You know, I've started using the guide that came with my machine for straps, and it's made a world of difference. Don't let anybody tell you that guides are slacking, because it's fantastic. The other trick I learned while making straps is to take one end and sew across and then back down like a U shape along the strap. This will help keep it from twisting as well. I'm going to cut to a video I filmed prior, before I kind of figured out this technique. Actually doing the daisy crossbody bag and the D-ring connector helped me decide that this method was it's a little more time consuming because you're going to the machine twice, but it's nicer and it makes the finished strap look a little nicer than it is trying to hold and clip and maneuver all at one time. But I'll show you how I did it the initial time. I'm going to cut to that video. I'm doing a 1.5 inch total width of my strap. So I have a 3 inch by whatever length you need piece of cork fabric, and then I have a 2 inch by whatever length you need wax canvas. Normally I limit my strap to be 54 inches because that's the width of a large piece of cork fabric. That way I don't have to piece anything together or get a very large piece. The wax canvas will always be longer than that by about 4 inches. So just so you're aware, that's kind of what we're looking at. So while I'm folding this and thinking about it, I can stitch closer to the edge of the wax canvas than I would want to stitch my strap on the edge of the cork. I like to stitch in about 1/4 inch on the cork because it gives it a little more breathing room. It allows it to have a little more room to wiggle, and also if you get it too close to the edge of your cork fabric, you could run the risk of it wearing quicker, and I don't like that, so that's why I do it that way. Hope that helps. And then so the cork fabric is a little bit different in that it will not stay. It's always going to want to go back to the shape that it is. So what I'll do is I'm going to chalk mark a line to the center. I'm going to fold and place this in the middle and clip all at the same time. You can use 1/4 inch Wonder Tape. You can use Fabri-Tac to tack this down with. I haven't felt that I have to do that in order for my straps to be very good, so I'm probably not going to spend the time doing that, especially since I need to get this sample done. And so you have 2 choices here. And the way I started doing this when I first started, because I was paranoid about getting off or having overlapping or whatever, I would do this all the way down my cork and then go back, put my strap on, and start clipping it all the way down. You can absolutely do that. You do not have to do it all at the same time by any means. So what I will do though is kind of start, and I like to alternate my clips, and this can always be adjusted. I mean, the good news is that you haven't sewn it yet, so it can always be adjusted. And I just work a little bit ahead of myself, clipping the cork first and then laying this down and using the last clips to secure it. So And if, I mean, again, if this seems like way too much going on for you, then just do the cork first, lay your wax canvas down, and unclip and reclip as you go. Because all I'm doing is I'm pushing this down, making sure that it's flat and that my cork's flat, kind of how my strap will end up being. And then I move the clips. And since this is a very long strap, I might have to space out my clips a little bit more after I hit the end here in order to be able to go to the end of the whole strap. Depends on how many clips you have, depends on what you're working with here. So I'm trying to keep it, and I will continually finger press this to try and get the cork to lay down a little bit to make sure that all of this is kind of straight. The wax canvas will have a little more stretch in it than the cork fabric does, so you definitely just want to work the material as best as possible in order to get it where you want it. Okay, and if for some reason, I don't know if you can tell here, you start getting kind of an overlap or whatever, this part's so hidden that as long as you're ending up with the same width and you're not getting off track too badly, it should work out just fine. So I just kind of minimally adjust as I go along, and then we'll do a final adjustment before I take it to sew. I've got it all clipped, so what I'm looking for is that I have kind of an even amount of cork on either side of the wax canvas, that it looks centered, that when I lay it flat, it doesn't go off course too much, meaning that it doesn't, it's not wavy in any way. You want it to be straight. The other thing is, since you have clips, you can, just kind of stretch it out here a little bit to make sure everything is smooth and flat. And then I want to make sure that is good. Alright, so you have about this much left to do something else with. And you can remark it. You would just hit it with a hairdryer or a heat gun to do that. So now I have this good end to start with at least. One thing I will do is I will sew down the entire length of my strap. When I get to the end, I'll pivot, sew across, and then sew down. That helps flatten that completely out where I want it to be. And then this will be kind of what the underneath looks like. Alright, so we'll go sew this up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here's one way to tell if you did a good job. If I move my strap along, there should be no twisting. There should be no twisting at all of the strap. If it's, off or it starts to do this, go back. Unstitch everything, do it again. There was one other thing I want to show you because it's something that's a common mistake to make, and I did it on accident, but you can benefit from my error this time around. So I was in a hurry. Normally I'm a very slow sewer anyway, so I wanted to show you, but this should be what your stitching looks like. And I did a 4.5 stitch length on my domestic, So, you know, very clean, fairly straight. I wasn't concerned too much about it being super straight stitching wise because it does blend into the fabric, and once this even sits in a hot car, these markings will go away a little bit more. But cork is slippery. Wax canvas is slippery, and if you're on a domestic like I am, my feed dogs don't like to pull it through completely, and I didn't use a walking foot, I just used my A foot. If I get in too big of a hurry or I don't help feed it enough, this is what can happen. So you can see on one side my stitching is perfect, and on this side it bunched up and did a bunch of stitches right together. That's because it wasn't feeding properly. Because I'm a perfectionist, I'm going to unpick this and redo it, but I just wanted you to be aware that that can happen if you don't take your time and slow it down a little bit. I generally don't even set my machine able to go very fast when I'm sewing with cork because I do tend to get in a hurry, especially at the end of projects, and I don't want seams like this. It takes me a lot longer to unpick stuff than to go slow the first time. So anyway, so this is our, well, it's not our final strap. I'm going to redo the stitching, but this is what it should look like for the most part. And you have a completed length of strap. This is a two-tone version. When you unstitch, when you seam rip here, you're going to end up with a bunch of ugly marks. So these will naturally come out of wax canvas in the heat and over time, where you will hardly be able to see them. But if you're impatient or you don't like the look, or it's going to somebody else, you can hit it with a hair dryer or a heat gun, a $20 heat gun from Amazon, and it'll end up looking like this. No center crease, your holes are less noticeable, and then those again will go away more and more over time. Just be careful with the heat gun, especially if there's cork underneath your wax canvas. You don't want to get it too close to the cork because it definitely can harm it or start to have it pull away from the backing. You don't want that because it gets up to 200 degrees. With a hairdryer, you should be fine. It doesn't get as hot. So just keep that in mind when you're working with this, or if you decide you want to take the creases out. But there are the, let's see if I can get it in camera. So there are the two sides pretty much. So there's without the heat gun and with the heat gun. And that's it. That's our quick little strap sewing video. Like and subscribe down below to get notified of our upcoming videos, which will include the finished product for this, the Daisy Crossbody by Blue Kala. That will be my next sewing video. Alright, thanks guys.